I'm going to not say where I'm calling from just so I can, and you'll get why. It's interesting that you brought up hearing from, Israelis who oppose the occupation. I'm not Israeli, but I am an Orthodox Jew. So I kind of, I'm very careful with what I say and, when I say it, because it can kind of ruin my life. So that's kind of why I'm just not saying where I'm from.
That's totally fine.
So I kind of, so I got a lot of shit yesterday because nobody really who I know follows my Twitter, but I posted and my brothers-in-law kind of gave me a shitload of shit for openly supporting Palestine for this. So I kind of wanted to just try and, I guess, give context from the Orthodox Jewish community and explain how they view things in general when it comes to Israel. Because, for example, my dad he voted for Trump twice. And I asked him, I'm like, you admit he's a racist, you admit he's a terrible person, you admit he's an idiot, you admit all these things about him. Why would you vote for him? He said, I'm a single issue voter, Israel. And that's kind of the way most Orthodox Jews just see this. We've been historically persecuted, obviously, across thousands of years. And after World War II, and the Holocaust, that just kind of was the last straw for most Orthodox Jews in terms of how they're going to view everything. And every person or population is automatically viewed as a threat in every way, shape, and form, which applies also in generally towards racism from the Orthodox Jewish community against African Americans and every group. So the thing that I'm not struggling with, but the thing that I'm struggling with when it comes to talking to people about these issues is that they don't look at this as Palestinians as people. They just look at them as a threat along with every other threat, because from the start, that's what we're always kind of taught. My own wife and I are kind of fighting about this, where she's being sent. She's not really politically aware or follow the news or anything like that, so she's privileged in that sense. But she's sending me clips and messages and things that are constantly shared from the Israeli point of view, and she's kind of unwilling to accept that. That sketch where it's the Nazis and they're like, we're the baddies, are we the baddies?
Right.
Kind of like that for most people. And
Ben, I just wanted to jump in really quick. One, do you mind just backing up off your phone a tiny bit? It's coming in a little hot, but I really,
sorry.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I really appreciate your bravery calling in. And I just am curious, have you, about your father at the very least, what does he think about the Charlottesville incident with the of course, white supremacists screaming Jews will not replace us and Trump backing them? I mean, I know that that's kind of a cliche example to bring up, but I just would be curious about your experience with your father. Hello?
So on this particular thing, we haven't talked about it. Clarify.
I think he just dropped, maybe. Hello?
I told him to back off his phone, and then he backed off too far. Dang.
All right, we lost him.
Hang in there, man. I mean, that is just, and I really, especially when you grow up in a situation where, everybody feels a certain way around you, and that's so embedded, to break out and to see things in a different way. It's just, it shows a lot of moral fortitude and a lot of courage.
Do you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, that was weird, because I think maybe there was the Ben, are you still there?
I am still here. I don't know if you can hear me.
Oh, could you hear? Could you hear us?
There was some sort of drop.
I couldn't hear you.
Okay, so
sorry about that.
I do want to get this answer. So Emma, why don't you ask your question one more time now that I think whatever issue that was is fixed?
Yeah, well, one, I just wanted to, I said when you weren't, when you got dropped, like the fact that you have essentially bucked the traditional viewpoints of your family and how you grew up is really brave and admirable, and shows like a lot of moral fortitude and courage. So props to you. So I think you might have actually heard my question about Charlottesville, and if you have broached that with your dad.
Oh, that's interesting. First of all, thank you. I really appreciate that. And I wish I was a little bit more brave with it, like where I'd be willing to kind of like really publicly go out, but I know it would literally ruin my life. And I don't think I can do that to my wife and kids. But with regards to my dad in Charlottesville, when we spoke about it, that was the first time he looked at me and he's like, I'm not going to curse, but he's an effing racist. Like that was the moment where I heard him say those words for the first time about Trump. So that was also the conversation I had after. I'm like, why do you support this? You're saying that it bothers you that he is all these things. And that's when the single issue voter on Israel came out. He's like, I will not vote for people who won't support Israel to the utmost degree.
I have to ask, I know obviously there is, it's not widespread among the community as a whole, being that you can't come out and be more public, but are you seeing any similar sort of cracks in the thought process, or even like coming out a whole like you with anyone in maybe your age range, in terms of, because I do think this is a very generational change too, we're seeing in the broader public, not even just any specific group, or is it literally just you, at least for your very specific experience?
Well, I mean, in general, like non-Jews, obviously, and I would say less or non-Orthodox Jews, overwhelmingly are, I guess, coming out against what Israel's doing. But in the Orthodox community, I'm the only person I know who is outwardly supporting Palestine in this situation. And when I say supporting Palestine, I'm not saying that, obviously, I'm not saying that, Israel shouldn't exist in the first place. I mean, I think it's a lot more complicated than to just say, just get rid of Israel. It doesn't exist. Like,
yes, of course.
But I have one friend who's center left, I would say. And my wife, I mean, when we had our conversation last night, which was less of a conversation, a little bit more yelly, she said, like, I acknowledge that the Israeli government is not good, and specifically Netanyahu. I get that he's a corrupt piece of garbage. That's not the point, though. I'm going to support my people who are also getting bombed and killed, and I will always support them regardless of what's happening, because the bottom line is they're my people, and I will always support them. And that's as far as I can get with her. And she keeps sending me stuff and it doesn't help that when she was walking today, some jackass decided to scream at her Allahu Akbar from out of their car. Like, that really pissed me off, because I don't need that in my life. Like, it's a lot harder to fight back against the cognitive dissonance and the misconceptions and the issues when, assholes will do that. And
right.
That's kind of the closest I've gotten.
Right. This is very interesting. I mean, I'm trying to think of more, because this,
I have a question. I have a question. So how did you get to this mode of thought, this point of understanding? How did you break out of some of the other kinds of thinking in your family and in your community?
It is a weird one. I'm gonna kind of explain. So I went to Brooklyn College. Like, I was on a liberal college campus and all that, and I actually was quite conservative at that point. I was 22. I was still conservative up until that point. I didn't really start to lean left until like 24 years old. I never really was against, gay people being married or anything. Like, I wasn't like that kind of person, but just like I grew up being told Obama is the worst and Democrats are the worst. So I just assumed it was correct. So I was on a MMA website called bloodyelbow.com, shout out. And they are the only website that the commenters on the website are lean left. And I learned a lot of things from that particular the comment threads in there, and met a lot of people who are amazing and I'm friends with to this day, very close friends with. And, a lot of my opinions and thoughts and things that I didn't know about, I was educated on in those comment threads. There are tons of these political discussions. One of the writers specifically focuses on fascism and Nazism and stuff like that as it pertains to the MMA community, and has exposed a lot of MMA gyms that are specifically neo-Nazi training grounds. And just as an example of some of the content that kind of, and they cover a lot of the domestic violence stuff that happens in the sport, and that's kind of where it started. And then John Oliver for the Trump stuff in 2016, and then I found you guys, and you know, I'm basically a sock dem now, but I do enjoy listening to both socialists and you know, more sock demies types, and I guess that's kind of how I got here.
This is one of the most amazing, I guess, I know it's, you know, you're just calling yourself a sock dem, but radicalization stories I have ever heard. I mean, Bloody Elbow is good, and you've described it perfectly. It is like one of the only, if not the only, like left-leaning type of site that covers MMA, but that is fascinating that basically MMA brought you to at least brought you further left and got you out of conservatism, political ideology, at least. That's incredible.
Yeah, and now I'm actually a moderator on the website now, and I also now write for another website that is also, all the writers on it are at the very least sock dems, and there are some socialists on it now, so we don't discuss politics or anything like that on the website. It's just purely analytical, but group chats are fun.
Really appreciate the call.
Great call. Yeah, please do call back in anytime. This was really fascinating. Thank you so much.
Thanks for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.